Hey guys, alright, so I'm obviously not in class today, so I just wanted to give you a real quick lesson on unit rates. So just to review the last couple of days, what we've been working on is ratios and tape diagrams and ratio tables. So big difference between ratio and rate is that a ratio is just comparing two different quantities. So we would do boys to girls, and that would simply, be 2 to 3. Now, a rate is still a comparison. It's just that those two quantities are going to have different units, okay? Boys and girls isn't really a units because those are people, they're things. A rate would be something like $27 for 3 pizzas. Okay, these are two very different quantities, whereas boys and girls can both fit under the category of people or students. They're just two different parts of that. And a rate, dollars and pizzas don't fall under the same category. They're very different. They are different units. Okay, so we're still going to compare. We typically will use the word for instead of to in a rate. Whereas in a ratio, obviously said 2. And then the next part of rate is what we call a unit rate. And a unit rate is going to be the rate for 1 unit, okay? Or one of the units is 1, okay? So if I use the same rate from before, if it's $27 for 3 pizzas, how much is it going to be for 1 pizza? That is the unit rate. Okay, so ratios, we're just comparing two numbers. You don't always add our labels on it. A rate, however, we are comparing two quantities that have different units, dollars and pizzas, miles and hours, liters per second. Okay, those are all different units. Okay, the unit rate is going to be the rate for 1 of a unit. So see how we have 1 pizza, whereas before we had 3 pizzas. Okay, so other common unit rates are, as I said before, miles per hour. Okay, liters per second. Okay, anything where it's just that 1 unit, 1 hour, 1 second, 1 minute. Okay, so that's just kind of the start, our definition of unit rate. Now, I'm going to go ahead and erase this. So a couple things with rates and unit rates. All right, I'm actually going to grab our textbook here. The first thing with rates is that you will often see them shown with double number lines. All right, so what we've got right here is a double number line. And hopefully we remember our lessons on number lines. Okay, a double number line, it's literally one number line above the other. Now notice how they're not counting by the same thing. All this double number line is showing is kind of the matchups between points and notes. So a couple examples, if we were trying to write a rate that represents this number line, we could say 150 points per 1 note. We could say 350 points for 2 notes. We could say 450 points for 3 notes. All of these answers are correct, okay, and you only have to name one of them. Okay, the one they chose was 600 points for 4 notes. We always say what's on top first, and then we say what's on the bottom. One skill I want you guys to have is the ability to figure out, okay, what would be the next rate? Okay, so after 5 notes, like how many would it be for 6 notes? All right, and if you kind of look closely, hopefully you see that you can't see, it's kind of hard to tell how easy it is to see on here, that the top number line points is going up by 150, whereas the notes are going up by 1. So if we add 150 to 750, that would be 900 points for 6 notes. Okay, so a double number line, you just have to really kind of, what are they counting by on top, what are they counting by on the bottom? If you think about in our ratio tables, this is very similar. A double number line and a ratio table are similar in how they're increasing. It's just that on a double number line, you're for sure going to go in order, whereas in a ratio table, we tended to kind of jump around quite a bit. Okay, so hopefully we understand that. Naming or writing a rate that represents a situation, all you need to do, look where they are matched up. Sometimes, depending on the double number line, you might be able to divide and find a rate in between, and hopefully you have the skills to find another rate up above. All right, now let's look at problems where we want to find unit rate. Okay, so this example right down here says a piece of space junk travels 5 miles in 8 seconds. How far does it travel per second? So they actually used a ratio table to solve this problem. Okay, so we're comparing distance and time, so miles to seconds. 5 miles, 8 seconds. How far does it travel per second? Well, to get from 8 seconds to 1 second, we'd have to divide by 8. And what we do to one, we do to the other. So 5 divided by 8, which is not a very nice problem, we actually can just leave it in that fraction form. Not all of our problems are going to be involving the fraction forms, but just wanted to point out that is an option, okay? So if the rate is 5 miles per 8 seconds, or in 8 seconds, it's equivalent to 5/8 of a mile in 1 second, or 5/8 a mile per second. So let's do some of those problems kind of together real quick. Let's get my examples up here. So if the rate is $28 saved in 4 weeks. So my strategy for solving these problems is kind of making a ratio table, but not quite officially. I'm going to take the $28, I'm going to write it on top, and I'm going to put the 4 weeks underneath. And yes, you do need to have those units, those labels on there. Okay, that is very important. So if I have $28 per 4 weeks, okay, this line we can always think of as the word per. Okay. I'm going to find an equivalent an equivalent rate for 1 week. And how do we go from 4 weeks to 1 week? Divide by 4. So what you do to one, we're going to do to the other. $28 divided by 4 is $7 per week. Let's write out our final answer. It would simply be $7 per week. This is an example of finding unit rate. This was our original rate up here. This was how I showed my work. Yes, always show your work. This here is my final answer. Always good to kind of put that box or that circle around it. Okay, this is just showing equivalent rates. We started with one, we went to the other. Like I said, it's kind of like a ratio table, except I didn't draw out the real true table, right? I just set it up in that fraction form, and that would be fine. So let's try another one together. Okay, let's say the rate was 270 miles in 6 hours. A little tiny bit. Okay, I'm going to set it up. I'm going to kind of rewrite this 270 miles over 6 hours. And I can shorthand as long as I still have my labels there. I know a unit rate is the rate for 1 unit. Okay, a little quote I like to use is my unit rate don't want none unless you've got 1 hun. Okay, I'll explain that when I get back to class if we haven't watched another video by now. So we just know we need to go from 6 hours to 1 hour. How do we do that? Hey, well, let's divide by 6. 270 divided by 6 is going to be, well, I know 6 can go into 27. Oops, drop my marker there. 6 can go into 27 4 times. That'd be 240. I'd have 30 left over. 6 can go into 35 times. So final answer is 45 miles per hour, or in 1 hour, however you want to kind of phrase that. Any questions? We're going to do one more together. Okay, so we should be always given a rate. I'm going to go a little bit bigger. 2,520 kilobytes in 18 seconds. Shorthand seconds there. Let's write it in our fraction form first, because we can always write rates and ratios just like that. Kilobytes, KB, 18 seconds. We're going to set it equal to another ratio rate. I know that I want 1 second, and that 1 we always want to be on the bottom, because we're taking something, comparing it to 1 second. So since we have to do 18 divided by 18 to get to 1, we need to divide 2,520 divided by 18. This would be a good example where I allow you to use your calculator. 2,520 divided by 18, okay, is going to be 140 kilobytes in 1 second. So we could say 140 kilobytes per second. Finding unit rate helps us because let's say if we know this rate for 18 seconds, and now let's say we want to know, okay, well, how many kilobytes can I download in 10 seconds? If I know 1 second, I can continue my work on. I can now go find for 10 seconds. I would just do times 10. If I wanted to know how many in 25 seconds, I would do times 25. I can do anything. That's the power of unit rate, is that if you know for 1, you can find out for any number. All right, so if I did times 10, this would just end up being 1,400 kilobytes in 10 seconds. Okay, so why do we have unit rate? Well, we want to know the price for 1 or how much in 1 so that we can calculate for anything else. We use this typically to compare prices at the grocery store. Okay, well, if this brand is this much for this much and this brand is this much for this much, well, how much do they compare when they both have 1? So if you have any questions about unit rate, hopefully this video helped you figure it out. You can always rewatch the video or touch base with me the next time I see you. So thank you very much, guys. Hopefully that'll help you today.